She didn't want you when you were there, when you texted first, when you stayed up late waiting for her reply. But the moment you pulled away, the silence broke. A message appeared. "Hey." And suddenly, she remembered your name. It's strange, isn't it? Human desire doesn't move in straight lines. It twists, it reverses. It comes alive in absence and dies in presence. You stop chasing and somehow, you become the prize. It's not coincidence. It's psychology. When you want someone too much, you reveal need. And need is the fastest way to lose gravity. Because in relationships, the person who cares least always holds the most control. Not because they're colder, but because they're rarer. And scarcity always raises value. Desire thrives on tension. The mind wants what it can't quite have. The second it's certain, the mystery dies. When she knows you're always there, you stop being a possibility. You become a guarantee. And guarantees don't excite anyone. Not her, not you, not anyone. Imagine this. Daniel texts her every morning. "Good morning." Every day for a month. Sometimes she replies, sometimes she doesn't. He keeps trying. Then one week, he stops. No message, no story views, nothing. By the third day, her curiosity starts to wake up. Why isn't he texting me? She opens his profile, checks if he's active. Fourth day, she messages first. "Hey, are you okay?" What changed? Not his words, not his looks. Only his focus. By removing his attention, he restored its value. Because attention, when always available, turns invisible. When withdrawn, it becomes a mirror. It makes her wonder, what did I lose? Attention loses power when it's guaranteed. Distance creates value when it's real. This isn't manipulation, it's physics. Everything abundant fades. Everything rare shines. But here's the danger. Once you understand how attention works, it's easy to start playing the game, to fake indifference, to perform distance, to become strategic instead of sincere. And that's where attraction turns darker, where silence becomes a drug, where the unpredictability of attention starts to hook the brain like a slot machine. In the next chapter, we go deeper into the science behind that addiction, why uncertainty feels like love, and why silence can become the most powerful weapon in desire. Here's the thing about silence. It's not just absence, it's stimulus. Because the mind hates unfinished stories. When you don't know what happens next, your brain fills in the blanks, and that's where the trap begins. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that drives gambling, social media, and toxic relationships. You never know when the next reward is coming, so you keep pulling the lever again and again. Every time she texts back, you hit the jackpot. Dopamine floods your brain. It feels like connection, but it's not. It's anticipation. Dopamine doesn't spike when you get the reward. It spikes when you think you're about to get it. That moment before the reply. That second before the phone lights up. That's where the addiction hides. You start checking your phone more. You start rehearsing what to say. You start watching for signs. And then, when she pulls away, your mind doesn't calm down. It panics. Because uncertainty isn't just uncomfortable. It's chemically unstable. Your body starts craving the next hit of clarity, and you confuse that craving with love. Ethan is dating someone new. She's warm one day, distant the next, texting for hours on Tuesday, gone by Friday. And each time she goes silent, his brain turns the uncertainty into meaning. She's busy. She's thinking. She's complicated. He doesn't see the pattern. He only feels the pull. Because every time she disappears and then reappears, the contrast burns deeper than consistency ever could. That's how intermittent reinforcement works. It rewards inconsistency. It confuses the nervous system. It traps you in a cycle where pain and pleasure start to look the same. You stop chasing her. You start chasing certainty. The strongest addiction isn't to love. It's to maybe. And that's what makes this so dangerous. Because she doesn't even have to lie. She just has to be unclear. Your mind will do the rest. It'll build stories, excuses, hope. It'll turn silence into a narrative. It'll make you loyal to confusion. That's not love. That's conditioning. In the next chapter, we'll explore what lies beneath that addiction, how scarcity, status, and the illusion of control turn desire into obsession, and why the less she gives, the more you crave. When something becomes rare, it becomes valuable. That's not just economics, it's human psychology. The mind is built to crave what it can't have and to ignore what it already owns. Scarcity changes perception. It creates urgency, pressure, desire. It tells your brain, this must matter or it wouldn't be slipping away. When she starts pulling away, you don't see it as loss. You see it as a challenge. You tell yourself you need to fix it, to prove something, to win her back. But you're not chasing love anymore. You're chasing status. You're chasing the feeling of being chosen. Because when someone withdraws affection, your ego doesn't accept it as rejection. It interprets it as imbalance. And the ego will fight to restore equilibrium, even if it means begging for attention. That's the hidden force called psychological reactance. When freedom feels threatened, the human mind rebels. Tell someone they can't have something, and they'll want it twice as much. Tell a man he's losing influence over someone he desires, and he'll do anything to regain it. It's not about her anymore. It's about what her withdrawal symbolizes, the loss of control. Imagine this. Jacob and Anna were close, texts every night, long talks, chemistry you could feel. Then slowly she began to fade, shorter messages, slower replies. He felt it slipping, and instead of stepping back, he leaned in harder. More texts, more effort, more energy. The more he tried, the less she responded. The more he gave, the less she felt. And when he finally stopped, she came back. Not because she suddenly cared, but because his distance made her feel his absence. Scarcity flipped the dynamic. It gave his presence meaning again. Scarcity doesn't create love. It reveals value. And value only exists when there's something to lose. That's why silence works. It's not the lack of words. It's the creation of space. In that space, the mind projects. It imagines, it idealizes. And before you know it, the distance becomes the drug. In the next chapter, we'll explore that drug itself, how your brain confuses longing for love, and why the fantasy of someone often feels more powerful than their reality. You never fall for who she is. You fall for what your mind imagines her to be. That's the cruel truth hidden behind obsession. When affection fades, your memory edits reality. You remember the warmth, the laughter, the closeness, but not the silence, the distance, the confusion. Your mind takes fragments of what happened and paints a masterpiece that never existed. It's not love you miss. It's the version of her your mind created. Psychologists call it idealization, the brain's tendency to replace uncertainty with fantasy. When something feels incomplete, we fill the blanks with perfection. That's why the ones who hurt us often live the longest in our heads. The story was never finished, so our imagination keeps writing it. Think of Michael. He dated Claire for a few months. It was electric. Intense conversations, late-night confessions, that intoxicating blend of closeness and chaos. Then, out of nowhere, she pulled away. He couldn't let go. Every song, every memory, every silence, it all meant something. But here's what he didn't realize. He wasn't missing Claire. He was addicted to the story of what could have been if she hadn't left. That's what longing really is. An unfinished sentence in your mind. You're not grieving the person. You're grieving the version of yourself that existed when they wanted you. The fantasy is stronger than reality because it never disappoints. It's perfect because it's incomplete. And that's why so many people stay trapped. They don't want the person back. They want the feeling back. That high of almost, that spark of maybe. But chasing what never was is how you lose what could be. In the next chapter, we'll break down how your mind turns that fantasy into loyalty, why you defend people who confuse you, and how emotional investment becomes a form of self-deception. You think you're being loyal to her, but you're not. You're being loyal to the feeling she gave you, and to the story your mind built around it. That's the quiet trap. You defend the person who keeps you uncertain, because walking away would mean admitting the story was never real. The human brain would rather suffer than face meaninglessness. It would rather chase confusion than accept clarity. This is how emotional investment becomes a cage. The more time, energy, and attention you've given someone, the harder it becomes to let them go. Not because they're right for you, but because your mind needs to justify all that effort. Psychologists call it the sunk cost fallacy. You've paid too much to quit. Every unanswered message, every second spent wondering, every night spent replaying moments, it all feels like proof that there must be something there. But it isn't proof, it's evidence of attachment. The brain confuses endurance for depth. It says, if I've held on this long, it must mean something. No, it means you've been conditioned to wait for the next hit. Think of Leo. He's been seeing someone for months. She's never cruel, just inconsistent. Always halfway there. Some days she's soft, warm, magnetic. Other days cold and distant. Leo tells his friends she's different. They see confusion. He sees connection. Why? Because he's built an identity around her attention. When she disappears, he doesn't just lose her. He loses himself. That's what makes this trap so powerful. The addiction isn't to her presence. It's to the version of you that feels alive when she returns. Attachment grows strongest where certainty is weakest. You confuse endurance with love, and confusion with meaning. That's why walking away feels impossible. It's not just detachment, it's ego death. It's admitting you built a temple to something that never existed. But here's the paradox. Once you stop feeding that illusion, the spell breaks. The silence that once haunted you becomes peace, and peace is the one thing emotional chaos can't survive. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to break that spell, how to stop chasing the ghost of almost and reclaim the one thing she took without asking, your focus. Every addiction begins with a lie, and the most dangerous one is the lie you tell yourself, that this time it will be different. That thought keeps you trapped in the loop. It convinces you to wait, to hope, to hold on. But nothing changes, except how deeply you lose yourself. To break the spell, you have to do something that feels impossible. You have to stop feeding the fantasy, stop decoding the silence, stop searching for hidden meanings in things that were never meant to mean anything. Because silence doesn't hide answers. It hides indifference. The moment you stop trying to interpret her absence, you reclaim your power. You stop being a character in her story and become the author of your own. It starts with recognition. You don't need closure from her. You need clarity from yourself. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you decide to take. There's a psychological principle called cognitive dissonance. It's the tension you feel when your actions don't match your beliefs. You tell yourself you deserve better, but you stay. You say you want peace, but you chase chaos. And your brain resolves that tension by rewriting reality, by convincing you that the chaos is passion, that the uncertainty is depth. Breaking the spell means refusing that rewrite. It means accepting that love without respect is just addiction with prettier language. You won't find strength in waiting. You'll find it in withdrawal. That's why healing doesn't look like revenge or victory. It looks like stillness. It looks like deleting the number and not needing to explain why. It looks like walking away quietly, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. Peace doesn't come when she misses you. It comes when you stop needing her to. That's when everything changes, because the moment you no longer react to silence, you become the silence. And that's the moment you regain control. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens after you reclaim that control, how detachment transforms attraction, and why your absence often says more than your words ever could. There's a moment in every man's life when he finally understands. The most powerful move isn't pursuit, it's distance. Detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's seeing what once consumed you from a higher ground. It's realizing that peace was never supposed to feel like begging. When you detach, you stop reacting to emotion like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's inconsistency. You stop mistaking attention for affection. And that's when everything flips. Because the one who controls their emotions controls the connection. She will feel it instantly, not in your words, not in your behavior, but in your energy. When you stop chasing, you stop feeding her sense of control. And when that control disappears, curiosity takes its place. Detachment restores polarity. It shifts the dynamic from need to choice. You're no longer waiting to be chosen. You're choosing what's worthy of your presence. This isn't manipulation. It's emotional discipline. You're no longer trading authenticity for approval. You're no longer begging to be seen. You're building a life that doesn't depend on being noticed. Remember this. When you detach, people see you differently. Because absence has weight. Because silence has presence. And because in a world addicted to noise, calmness feels like confidence. She will wonder why your name no longer lights up for her. She will feel the shift, the invisible space where you used to orbit. She may come back, but this time you won't be waiting at the door. You'll be centered, grounded, whole. Detachment isn't losing interest, it's losing illusion. You stop needing the story to end your way because you've already learned the lesson it came to teach. And that's what makes you untouchable. When your peace can't be taken, nothing can be used against you. In the next chapter, we reach the final stage of this journey, the rebirth, the part where you stop reacting to love as a battlefield and start seeing it as a mirror. Because in the end, she was never the test. You were. Every story like this ends the same way. Not with revenge, not with regret, but with revelation. You begin to see that she was never the enemy. She was the mirror. A reflection of every wound you refused to face. It wasn't her silence that hurt you. It was what that silence exposed. Your fear of being forgotten. Your need to be needed. Your hunger to prove you were enough. She didn't create those things. She revealed them. And that's what makes this journey sacred. Pain has a strange kind of wisdom. It strips away illusion. It forces you to meet the version of yourself that no one else could introduce you to. When you finally stop chasing, you start observing. You stop asking, why did she do this to me? And start asking, what did this teach me about me? That's where growth begins. In stillness, in silence, in the spaces between the noise. You begin to rebuild yourself, not around her attention, but around your own awareness. You start to see patterns for what they are. Lessons. You start to see attraction for what it is. Energy. You start to see love for what it should be. Peace, not performance. And as you rise, something subtle happens. The same silence that once made you anxious becomes the silence that protects you. It's not empty anymore. It's full of strength. You stop needing closure because you understand the truth. Closure isn't something that happens between two people. It happens inside one. You don't hate her, you don't idealize her, you simply see her, and you let her go. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Healing isn't forgetting what happened. It's remembering it without losing yourself. That's the rebirth. When you no longer seek validation through connection. When your silence isn't a weapon, it's wisdom. When your peace becomes louder than your pain. Because in the end, the real power wasn't in her control. It was in your ability to walk away from it. And that's the lesson most never learn. The moment you stop chasing what confuses you, you make space for what understands you. That's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a better one.